or they're analyzing Mormonism, analyzing Mormons. It's been a long day. So great. Like, Julie, I have always been, I think I've watched every video that you've ever put out. I always watch you on Mormon stories. So I have had so much benefit from you pulling back the curtain on the details of Mormonism. Your brain holds on to all of those facts and dates, and then you expose how they correlate. How many books do you have? The ancient, not ancient, antique.
I have so many. And then I have regular novels because I majored in literature. I just was moving. So we had to rearrange my house a little bit because my sister is going through a divorce and she's 22 and she has a 4-year-old, which is so Mormon of her. But she's done stuff with her. But anyway, I've had to box with a lot of my books and I have so many. So I'm sorry, my dog is being really.
Oh, no.
But yeah, I think the oldest book I have, it's 1918 is the oldest one I have. Because I have a 1920 Book of Mormon, then I have one that was published by the Apostles just right before that. All right. Okay, yeah, but I think the main reason, because I was telling people when I was waiting for you, so I think the main thing you wanted to talk about was word radio. And
Yes,
they're,
talk about the stance against ex-Mormons and how that's destroying people's lives.
yeah, it's, oh my gosh.
Right.
Personally, I really don't like word radio. I don't find them to be very fair and ethical.
Loving.
Yeah,
Nice.
like I'm trying to keep my words. I try to be nice. Anyway, I don't like watching.
So the reason I watch Word Radio, because I have so many followers, like every morning, my followers would be like, Jenny, have you seen this video? Have you seen that video? So I feel like I have to have my finger on that pulse because I'm in the ex-Mormon space. But also one of the reasons why I showcase Word Radio is that they are saying the stuff that my friends and family within the church are saying. But I can't just pull out my iPhone and record every time my cousin says something or when my uncle says something to my face. Like, I can't record those things, but I feel like Word Radio is not in isolation. They're pretty indicative of attitudes towards and doctrines around whatever topic they're speaking on. And sometimes the real life conversations that I'm having with people, friends, family, who are still LDS, are worse than what the guys on Word Radio are showing. And I also like the Word Radio comment section because that's where active believing members of the church of all walks of life get in there and type. They're saying the quiet stuff out loud in the comment section that if you live in Gilbert, Arizona or Crane Creek or Salt Lake City or somewhere in California that has a lot of Mormons, you may not see your Mormon neighbors saying these things out loud. They just have smiles on their faces and they're really nice and congenial to you. You watch Word Radio and you know what they're really thinking. And in the comment section, that's always where it's at to me.
You sent me a screenshot of one of their comments and it was terrible. So I don't even want to go in the comment. Did you search around in the comments?
Every single day, Julia. By 4 a.m., I'm usually like, what are these couple of the big LDS podcasts doing? And what are the members saying? I'm really looking for, I want to see some LDS. So the topic of the video that I shared with you that we're going to talk about here is that do people who leave the church not have morals? Is that what they entitled it? Is that the title of it?
Yeah.
Do ex-LDS not have morals is the title of the episode that we're going to talk about here. And when I first went to the comment section, I'm looking, I want to see, are other people who just happen to go to Mormon church and happen to watch this podcast, are some of them making statements that are humanizing, showing compassion and kindness, that are pushing back against this? Like, I want to see comments like, oh, my daughter left the church, but she's so amazing. Like, I think that this episode is really mean and demeaning. Or just because somebody leaves the church doesn't mean that they've lost their morals or values. You don't have to be Mormon to be a good person. I'm looking for anybody who seems to have any reason. And I have to say, scouring all of the comments of this particular episode, except for the couple other people like myself, who you know are like ex-Mormon influencers, I don't see anybody who's like pushing back against their concept that when you leave the church, you lose your morals.
That's wild.
But is it okay? So here's what I wanted to like. I just have so many questions for you on what you think about this. I hear from a lot of people, both in my personal life and on social media, who've left the Mormon church in particular. And this happens in other religions, Mennonite, JW, Scientology. I have a couple Catholic friends who like their family doesn't think the same of them anymore. But within Mormonism, I hear from so many people personal stories of their family members changing the way that they view them and the way that they behave towards them just because they leave the church. And I don't think that's by accident. And I know that you know everything about everything. So before we dive into Word Radio here, would you say that there are some Mormon doctrines, both we can go back to Joseph Smith and the old church, and then currently today, that foundationally teaches that if you've apostatized from the church, that there's something wrong with you?
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah. That was the huge rhetoric from the very beginning. Like, if you leave, there's something wrong with you. Like, they've demonized Christianity in general under Brigham Young. Like, there's so many things that they're like, that have that kind of meaning. And yeah, I don't know how to expand on that more than, yeah. Like, I feel like that's absolutely the story. If you leave, you'll lose everything. You'll lose your moral compass and you'll become a worse person.
And
And
Book
like,
of Mormon tells a bunch of stories about people who apostatized that was really like foundational to my mindset about apostates growing up. Like the whole rod of iron, the iron rod vision, where the iron rod is supposed to be the word of God, and that's the people in the church, and they're holding on to it and they're going along this path, clinging to this handrail that's keeping them on the straight and narrow. And sometimes they like look around and let go of it. And then when they let go, they fall into this dreary wilderness pit of despair. And then Korihor, who we've just named, Joe Rollins started the Church of Korihor, which is our atheist church. And Korihor in the Book of Mormon, all he does is go around like saying, hey, the church isn't true. They're lying to you. Like the church leaders, it's not accurate. This is just, it's a fraud. They're committing fraud. And we have this story of this character named Korihor, who it seems like he's genuine. Like, he wasn't pretending that the church wasn't true. He really believed that. And he ends up being completely homeless. He's starving. He's going around begging. And then he's struck near. It was a new. And then eventually he trampled to death in the streets. And this is look what happened to him because he stopped believing in the church. And I get called Korihor all the time, ever since becoming an Exmo commentator. So
oh, I'm not sure. I was just thinking about this. I think one of the things with me, before we jump, or as we're jumping into this episode with Word Radio, I feel, oh, maybe I'll resend this if I think about it, but like maybe, but this is what I'm feeling right now. I feel like I have more morals or ethics since leaving the church. Like, I feel like there are things I would absolutely not do because of my moral code that I would have done in the church. For instance, that story where he's trampled, they're like, oh, justice. Now, this man has been served justice, where nobody deserves that. No matter what they believe, no matter what's going on, nobody deserves to be trampled. Like the things in the church where, like, if you leave the church and you try to leave, they'll send the Danites after you or whatever. Like, that's really bad. No. And I just feel like that kind of thing, or like Elder Oaks, he recently gave a fireside where he was like talking about how he's, I don't understand why families, I needed to make a video about this, but I think to the gist was like, I don't understand why families stop loving their family members who leave the church. Well, like in 2006 or 2016, I can't remember which one, but he was telling everyone, if you have gay kids, don't let them come to your house.
Cool.
Don't let them stay over. Don't let them be a lengthy house guest and be like, no, don't ask me to do that. And so I'm like, his rhetoric is ostracize them. And now he's like, why are you guys ostracizing each other? Like, why are you? I don't know. I just thought it was, anyway. So since leaving the church, I feel like I'm more capable of loving and giving that kindness and that, I don't know, to people. Whereas as a Mormon, I was holding on to judgment or holding on to other things. And I think Cardinellis and like the whole Word Radio talked about that a little bit. And I sent you a clip and I was like, I feel like I'd agree to this. But anyway, we can talk about that, or if you have comments before.
yeah, I am so glad you said that because as somebody who was LDS for 44 years and now for 6 years, I went from Christian to a year and a half ago, broke up with Jesus, and now I'm atheist. I see sometimes, or I think sometimes, that I really didn't have any morals or values when I was a member of the LDS church. I was very good at obeying. So I was good at the behaviors, like mimicking those behaviors. So if everybody is like going out and getting to know their neighbors, and if you have any non-member neighbors, you like bake them cookies when they move in and stuff. I was mimicking that behavior, but I didn't necessarily love or connect with my neighbors. And there's so many conflicting rules and ideologies that I often felt if somebody had asked me, what are your values? I don't know. My values would have been all around obedience. Like I value the Sabbath day and going to church on Sunday, and I value getting married and having babies. And I value paying tithing, but what's the actual value? What's the moral underneath that? Like, I value contributing something so that I can help humanity do better. I really didn't have values that I could have used as a Mormon. And I say sometimes on my socials that I was a Mormon monster. I was a white supremacist, rich, privileged, horrible, mean, judgmental woman who I hated everybody. If you were not in that little Mormon box with me, I judged you. I wouldn't let my kids go to parties with non members. I would not let my children date non members. My son, as a senior in high school, fell in love with a non member girl. Julia, her name's Leah. One day she came over to our house. I told my son, you break up with her, I'm breaking up with her. You pick, because I'm not going to have you dating this girl who's not Mormon. And she gets to our house. My son was inside. I'm like, hey, Leah, really quick before you go inside, we're going to walk down our cul-de-sac here. And I walked down the street with her and I said, do not ever, you and my son can never hang out. We can't date a non-member. And it's over. So, and if I hear that you guys are spending too much time together at school, then I will take him out of the class you guys share together, and I'll even pull him out of school if I have to, because it is over and you do not want to cross. That is the type of person that I was inside the church. I was so afraid of my kids losing their testimonies. And I was so motivated by just obeying and imitating those rules that I don't think in 44 years I ever even looked inside to see what type of a person am I in here. And when I left the church and everything just fell apart, and I had to look at for the first, what do I feel about how I treat other people? What do I feel about other people? What do I feel about honesty? What do I feel about these things? When I, for the first time as a 44, 45, 46-year-old woman, had to look inside, everything changed. And I would say in every way possible, I am a better person than I ever was in Mormonism, which is why when I clicked, when my followers sent me this video this week, Jenny, did you watch this yet? And I clicked on it, my brain just about exploded because, and again, you and I both as influencers in the Exmo space are around a lot of other ex-Mormons, and we see their stuff and we dialogue with them. You know, you're over there on Mormon Stories podcast having conversations with people. So you see people that were once inside the church and now they're out, and you see the goodness and the morals and the values and the passion projects that they embrace to make the world a better place. And you know firsthand that many people transitioning out of church are better and happier. And I think just like kinder and more loving and amazing than they ever were.
Yeah, than they ever were. Yeah.
Than they ever were as Mormons.
Yeah, I do want to say, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I do want to say though, I hope you give yourself grace. Because like as Mormons, we're doing the best we can, like as active members of the church. And I know that a lot of active members of the church are doing the best they can. And like while we can step back and say that was a monster or whatever word you use, like I hope that you can still be kind to yourself for that past woman and not be, I don't know. I just hope that there's like grace there.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think that the deconstruction and understanding the systems behind it has been so important for me to see that I was in many ways this little marionette and people were pulling my puppets. And I have a flaw of being impressionable and wanting to make people happy and wanting to be part of the group, which it's a human survival instinct that we all have. And when I had the opportunity to choose better, I have. So thank you for saying that. Yeah, I think it's really easy for those of us that were not super kind inside the church to beat ourselves up. But anyway.
Yeah. So in the episode, so it's, I don't know all the people's names. I really think I only know Carden and maybe that's all. I don't know. There's like a panel of 4 guys on Word Radio. But anyway, in this episode, they talked about a study that was done. I can't remember the man's name who did it. Do you remember? He's often on Word Radio, I think.
Yeah, I have it somewhere. I don't know.
So that
He breaks it somewhere.
He shows charts that are comparing like active members of the church, inactive members of the church, and then I think just general Christianity or something like that. But he breaks it down into 5 different categories, and which was super interesting. And the 5 categories was care and harm, fairness and cheating, loyalty and betrayal, authority and subversion, sanctity and degradation. So those were the 5. And the one I think about, because they said that ex-Mormons ranked higher in the care than Latter-day Saints did, as far as I remember.
Yeah,
And so
they were really high. Our little bar on that one was pretty high. So this research project was done in the Book of Mormon belt there. So I think it was Arizona, Utah, I don't know, Salt Lake County, somewhere in there. So they submitted these questions to people who have had some type of exposure to the LDS and they live in that area there. And it was a questionnaire around these morals. So those 5 different categories were what they say are the measure of morals. So the Mormons, never Mormons, questioning Mormons, and ex Mormons. Was that the 4 categories?
is there like a
And
general Christian one or no? Was it just through the
was
lens of Mormonism? I can't remember.
general Christian? Oh my gosh, I don't know.
I know later they they did a test with horror as one of the because they showed their own results and then they showed results and I don't even know how they got these results, but they showed results for like John Dehlin, Alyssa Grenfell. I think it was Cora Horror and Mother Teresa.
I think they were just AI. Did they just AI theirs?
Yeah, okay. I was like, what in the world? It was Nehor from the Book of Mormon, and then Judas, and then Mother Teresa. So it was like 2 ex-Mormon content creators, and then but yeah, I guess that was AI anyway. So that was really interesting. Which anyway, weird, but
It's also interesting that they're obsessed with John Dehlin. They're just like stalker level obsessed with John Dehlin. That's a whole other thing. But yeah, so those 5 different categories they broke down. And what did you think about the results? Like the little graph that they show where here's the Mormons. And I think that was the one that interested me the most was here's the Mormons, here's the active believing people who go to church at least 3 times a month. And then here's the ex-Mormons, people who no longer believe in or attend Mormon church. And they showed the little measurements for each different category. What did you think about the results and what did you think about their conclusions?
so I can't remember the exact. I'd have to look at the charts in order to see. But I just thought it was super interesting about the care and harm and how the ex-Mormons was really high and everything was low. And they said that I think that even the ex-Mormons would agree that's the highest and the rest don't really matter. And I was processing that and I was like, yeah, I don't. Because after you leave the church, like the fairness and cheating, like a lot of what we're told as Mormons is fair or cheating, we might think differently as we step away from the church or have more, I don't know, grace towards that or like loyalty and betrayal. Like one of the questions was like how loyal are you to this team or to the United States? Like I remember Cardin said that he was like extremely loyal to this country. Whereas like with me, like our country is run by flawed humans who are very limited in what they can and cannot do or are willing to do. And so for me, I don't feel as loyal to my country as other people might, or the ones that tested Mormon. Those are higher. And I think as you step away from the church, you learn to question things and like you question loyalty and what that means and betrayal and what that means or authority and subversion. Like who is the authority figure that you're trying to follow? And so all those make sense to me. And the sanctity and degradation, I think those can also be like we change our perspective as we're leaving the church. And they did say that these results weren't, they don't know exactly like whether it happens as you're transitioning out or if
These people.
yeah. So I just thought that was interesting. But I think the conclusion, I think mainly the conclusion to me was that ex Mormons have their care and harm, that aspect was the highest, and the rest are like, they don't matter as much. And I just feel like that's a normal sort of transition when you're leaving and you're learning to question and think critically about certain things. I don't like how they overall spoke about that because I think there's a way to see that in a very logical way. Like Hardin kept saying, and I wish I could go to YouTube right now, like check the transcript because I really feel like he said the phrase full of crap referring to ex Mormons.
Multiple times, so many times. And then he also said, oh, yeah, so they wouldn't even feel bad if they unalived some of that. What you're saying is,
Yeah, like his full of crap idea was like, oh, they say his conclusion was that even though they say that they that carry their highest
that's
more
full of crap.
yeah, like it's full of crap. Like they don't actually give to charities, they don't actually do all these things, they don't actually help people, they don't actually care about people. Like he's just saying these things. He's not citing any studies, he's not doing anything, he's just saying it. And that's where
It bothered me that he thinks that. It bothered me that the host of one of the biggest, most far reaching Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints based podcasts, who produces in a massive amount of content, who's heavily sponsored by Mormon run businesses indirectly through church funds. It bothered me that he so blanketly just threw out there that, yeah, they don't care about anybody. They wouldn't feel bad if they unalived somebody. They were full of crap. Um, Throughout the entire episode, the hatred towards ex-Mormons was really hard to watch. And in some cases, I was listening, like I'm looking at the little charts and it's okay. So they're saying that this is a bad thing. Then let me turn my computer back on. The one around authority figures, I think that once you pull God out of things, like as a believing Mormon, I was so into nationalism in America because I believed in Heavenly Father and that Heavenly Father had inspired Christopher Columbus to come to America. And that then George Washington and the founding fathers had literally had these angels around them, inspiring them and whispering to them like direct revelation on how to write the Constitution. Like the Declaration of Independence had been through the mouth. It was inspired by God. I believed in that authority figure that was then guiding and leading all of those things in America. When I put my hand over my heart and said the Pledge of Allegiance, I knew that this was Heavenly Father's land. The Book of Mormon says so. Adam and Eve were in America. The Garden of Eden was in America. Everything happened in America. Heavenly Father had restored all of this. This was a righteous land that my European ancestors were brought over by the hand of God. And I had so much nationalism, so much like that authority. I believed that the president of the United States leading our free country was as much ordained by God as the prophet, as Joseph Smith, as Jesus. Like they were all, that stratification in status to me was so powerful. When you grew up as a little girl in a cult that teaches you that your leaders they speak for God. And the minute that, like, I no longer believe in Heavenly Father came out, it's like, boom, well, then maybe America wasn't inspired. Maybe it was just people doing what they felt like doing. And maybe this wasn't a promised land. Maybe it's just a bunch of dirt in the form of a continent like everything else. And maybe it doesn't matter if I'm an American. And maybe authority figures aren't there because of God. Maybe they're there because of us, because we push them into those positions because they're more charismatic or they have more money or they have some other form of privilege that pushes them to that status. Maybe this was Heavenly Father. And then, yeah, like the whole entire tower of boom crumbles. And I would say that on that, what they're considering a measurement of morals, the authority and subversion one is really interesting. It says humans have an ability to form hierarchical social interactions. This foundation underlies virtues of leadership and followership, including deference to legitimate authority and respect for traditions. So if you ranked high on this one, then you have high respect for authorities. And if you rank low on this one, then you have a lot of subversion, anarchy. You don't believe in stratification and status. And this is presented in this book by this man who came up with this study as lacking morals. And I would say that these are probably social mores that are part of civilization, but are they really something that we should idealize at all?
Well, I had a lot of random thoughts as you were talking. But I'm majoring in history, and I just took a history class, like the American lens, and just thinking about like the Declaration of Independence and Thomas Jefferson and things like that. Like Thomas Jefferson, when he wrote the Declaration, when he wrote those documents, he had no intention of giving rights to women. He had no intention of people of color having rights. He even once told his nephew that Christianity was hocus pocus. Like he was even questioning things. Like these are literally just men who are just who in my opinion, who are clearly not called to God. If God sees everyone, if black and white, bond and free, male and female, that's not what he was. That's not what these leaders were, especially Christopher Columbus. That's a whole other thing. But yeah, as you step away, you could start questioning.
Monster.
Like stepping away and questioning and learning to be like, oh, if this man wasn't called of God, then what was he? If he wasn't, I don't know. There's just a bunch of things that like can.
What if he was just a guy with some ideas? Like, if that's all it was?
I didn't see any of that in the study, and maybe it was in this gentleman's book. Do you know his name? I feel bad not knowing his name off.
I have a note somewhere, and now I don't have it in front of me because I just came off of another podcast, so I don't have all of my notes open. I'm not sure where to find it.
I just wanted to say I don't think that
On my YouTube, I'll link that in the description. I will link the book that they're basing this off of. When I post this to my YouTube, I'll link that in the description so everybody can go back and refer to this. And I don't have it here. I'll put it up in my link tree afterwards on TikTok.
Also, there's a lot of people who are in the comments saying that they donate to other causes, and I think that's really amazing. whether it's to food banks or to animal shelters and things like that. I just think that's great. Also, I just wanted to say, I don't think I'm curious to see if this gentleman, and they didn't talk about it in the episode, if they talk about how much are worrying at. Is it wrong to have these views? Because they're just saying that these are the 5 categories that we're going for, but what do they actually benefit to have those? I don't know. I just was wondering, are they talking about whether it's right or wrong?
Thank you for that's verbalizing exactly like what I was feeling the whole entire time. Because in the episode, these word radio presenters are how ex-Mormons score really low. They don't have morals according to this measurement of morals. And there was a new one added, which was reciprocity.
Oh, yeah.
And then what's the opposite of that? Selfishness of some form. So now there's 6 according to the original author of this study. And yeah, they're presenting this as, ex-Mormons don't have values. But that's what I was thinking the whole entire time. Like, why do we value these as values? And maybe that just proves that I'm a core whore or a nahor or an anarchist and that I'm a terrible human. And maybe that's why we're having this discussion today, because maybe I got done watching their thing and thought, am I a terrible human and I don't know it? Because I don't believe that anything has specific sanctity. For instance, I am a fierce global advocate for anti-theism. I don't think that just because you say this is a belief system that people shouldn't scrutinize, pull back the curtains, peek under the table and make sure that you're not doing horrible, horrendous things. I don't believe in sanctity of any, but is that a value that we should even have? The fairness in cheating? There are times when you are in an unfair system that if you don't work the system, maybe cheat the system, you're not going to get ahead. Harriet Tubman, one of my all-time heroes. I think that if I ever get a tattoo, Harriet Tubman's going to be one of my first. She's such a remarkable human being. She was acting illegally. She was cheating the system, running back into Slaysville and getting people the operation under her whole entire Underground Railroad. Operation Underground Railroad. Oh my God, I've been Mormonized. Underground Railroad was really somebody cheating the system in the name of that terror for other people. So do any of these things even matter? And what does this even have to do with their whole entire episode on how their overall stance in the comments was ex-Mormons are the worst people that we've ever met?
But then even looking at other systems, I think that's a great example of with Harriet Tubman, as far as like cheating the system. Like this is how the system was created and it wasn't working. And so people pushed against it, or even other historical crimes where it's like women pushing for the ERA for equal rights for women. Like all those things are pushing against the system, which I think is right. But even questioning like loyalty and betrayal. If we look at other countries, what about those people in Nazi Germany who did not want to do that and did not want to be involved? Would you say they have less morals because they were pushing against the loyalty? Or other countries, or Russia during the Tsar with I can't remember.
Mhm.
Anyway, is it wrong to question these things? Is it wrong to pull back from loyalty or have less loyalty? I think that even they would agree that in certain circumstances that yes, of course it's okay to disagree. To not, I don't know. I just think that's interesting that they didn't. It's an interesting aspect that they did not seem to look at or question at all. Like,
There's no nuance to it. So apparently, this man published this book about the morals and did all of these studies and stuff. And Deseret News has recently published this article about how and with the graphs and everything, that former members of the church score low in all of these measures of morals. And then the Word Radio guys decided to do a full episode about it with really faithful and great overall body language and conversation. So it trickled down to where they're putting this out there. Somebody at Deseret Book decided, hey, we're going to print this article where we researched all of the people in the Mormon belt here. And look at this. Look how low this little scale is. People who leave the church, there's no sanctity, there's no authority, there's no fairness, there's no loyalty. They were actually fairly high in fairness. But these things, like, you don't even have morals. These are immoral people. When you leave the church, you're immoral, or maybe you left the church because you were already immoral. And even putting that label on it, the fact that he is labeling this a morality scale is so brain-boggling.
yeah. And that reminds me, going back, sorry, I'm really interested in the feminist side of history, just in general.
Yeah, me too. It's my obsession in life.
And one of the things that the church was trying to do is, in order to make their stance for the Equal Rights Amendment for women in the 70s, they had to make it a moral issue. And so they made this whole pamphlet called like ERA, a moral issue. I'm pretty sure that's the exact title. So they had to make it like quotable. But in order to have a stance so they could have their amicus brief or have their say for it, they had to make it a moral thing. And then they've done that before with people of color or with LGBTQ. They have to make it a moral issue so they're redefining or they have to like play around with those words so that they can have a say against those things. And I just think that's super interesting. I believe in equality. I think that women should have just as much equality as the rest of the world and like people of color, everything. I don't know. I just think that's really interesting that the church has to do that kind of thing, kind of play with those words.
And label people as less than.
Um,
And to me, that's the biggest problem. That's why I'm an anti-theist, because I think it's all right for you to say, I belong to a religion where I believe that I should go to church every Sunday. My faith teaches me that I should pay tithing, so I'm going to do that. My religion tells me that I should be married to my husband and not just live with him. If you want to choose to follow a faith, that's one thing. The United Nations right now is extremely concerned about religious discrimination, religious superiority. They're calling it faithism. Faithism, just like racism and sexism and ageism, is discrimination based on religion. The problem that I, as a Mormon, had, and that the Mormon church has really heavily leaned into, is teachings on non members, non believers, never Mormons, and apostates, and anyone who doesn't fit into their faith that is a very active and very destructive form of discrimination. This is what we see going on over in the Middle East. It's faithism. Faithism ends more lives than anything in the history of civilization. People saying, you have to do what I believe my God is telling not just me, but everybody else to do. And if you don't do that, then you're not as good as me. And that's where I, as a Mormon, got into trouble. It wasn't just, I believe that I should get married and have babies. I then used that lens as the litmus test for how good other humans were. And that is the whole, that's by definition what discrimination is. My neighbor, they aren't married. They have 2 kids together, but they're not as good as me because they're not married. This neighbor over here, it's 2 lesbians living together. They're not as good as me. That neighbor over there, he smokes cigars in his man cave every Saturday afternoon with all his buddies after they played basketball. He's not as good as me because he's not doing what Heavenly Father wants him to do. And when we have pastors and bishops standing up in churches on Sundays and teaching, all of those people over there are not as good as the rest of us in devaluing humans based on faith, that turns into a big problem. And within the Mormon church, being an ex-Mormon creator, I see the most amount of religious discrimination of this practice of faithism that the United Nations has categorized from members of the Mormon church towards ex-Mormons. That because you no longer believe in that, you're not as good as me. And Julia, that's what I felt like this entire episode was. We have research that shows if you no longer go to church, you're not as good. You're a bad person. You don't have morals.
and I think that's a very unfair characteristic. And I feel like he didn't do it justice, or the gentleman didn't do it justice who did the study. Because, like, you're saying that the ex Mormons who have left the church, atheists, have the highest form of care. They care about care and harm of others. And then you're saying everything else matters, like loyalty matters. And somehow that says something that I'm a lesser person because I'm not loyal to my country, or that I'm a person because I don't give into authority figures. Like, I just think those are silly. Like, and maybe that's because we're ex Mormon and they would say, like, oh, it's because you only care about number one. You don't care about the other 5 things. Yeah.
It's long. That's what I took away from it. I took away chicken cordon bleu is what I call them. Chicken cordon bleu. From the whole entire episode, I just took away that, well, because these people don't believe in authority, they don't believe in sanctity, they don't have that loyalty, and I do, they're not as good as us. And he says that. Wasn't just me reading between the lines. So I have a question for you. As a member of the Mormon church, would you have said that you would probably have scored high in all of these? That respect for authority, the sanctity, and holiness of certain things, fairness, loyalty, care. Would you have scored high in those morals as an active believing Mormon, or did you maybe not have that respect for authority figures as a member of the church? Have you changed? I guess is my question.
Well, I'll answer it 2 ways because I feel like I would have ranked high because I did see the presidents that way. I saw our constitution that way. I saw the prophet that way. Like, I saw my parents that way. Like, these are God gave these parents to me, and I must listen to them, obey them at all costs, kind of thing. Although I will say, so yes, I think I would have scored high, as just like the Mormon in the study. or members of the church. I don't know why they kept saying anyway. But I will say that when I went to the temple for the first time and I got endowed, they have the line that says that you will, oh, let's see if I can remember it. That you'll give your very lives if necessary to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Oh my
That
gosh, that freaked me out.
because it
I was 20.
I was 24 and or 22. I was freaked out because I was like, whoa, to the church, like to the organization, not to God or Jesus. Because God and Jesus are like these perfect beings, but the church isn't perfect. I was so floored that I
Let me pause on this for a second for like for our non-Mormon listeners. As you're going through the temple, so this was in preparation for my wedding for me. Were you going on a mission? Were you getting married?
I was going on a mission.
You are going on a mission. So there's this 2-hour session where you do all the rules and covenants. New Name Noah has an endowment session, is what it's caused, and you are called, and you do like the handshakes and all these chants and watch a video about the creation of the earth. And you take these oaths, you make covenants with God. And the one that absolutely blindsided me, and I was so emotional about it in my live endowment the first time, because I really dug deep and I was like, would I do that? Am I saying yes to this? Because, oh my gosh, I never knew the MBU was going to ask me this. It says, I promise with your hand in the air that I will give everything with which I have been blessed, my time, my talents. What else is there?
Everything would bless you, everything that he will bless you with to the
So
building.
everything, like my children, my house, my
Everything.
everything to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for the building up of the kingdom of God and the establishment of Zion. And then you have to bow your head and say yes. And I'm this little 20-year-old girl. And I was just shaking because I was thinking, I'm supposed to give my life. Like I literally pictured somebody with a weapon to my head. Like, what if someone comes and says, hey, I'm going to unalive you if you don't renounce the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And it did not sit well with me at all. I bowed my head and I said yes to that, but I was extremely uncomfortable with that whole entire thing. And that is what every young girl who gets married in the temple, every young man who gets married in the temple, your Mormon friends and family in your little neighborhoods in Gilbert and Salt Lake that are going through the temple for the first time to go on their missions, they are still taking that oath. Is it modified or is it still the same?
I feel like that part's the same. I feel like they've made it less sexist, but I feel, and anyone can correct me because I haven't been through it in a few years, but I feel like it's just been less sexist. So the women can now covenant to God instead of just their husband and things like that. But I don't think that part has changed. I think that one is still.
Even my own life, if it be necessary, to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, teenagers around the world, young adults around the world, new converts around the world are covenanting. So my mom and dad got the worst version. My mom and dad had to promise that they would rip out the organs and their bowels and feed them to the birds of the air and the beasts that it killed. So this we got the light version, but it was very emotionally disturbing. But did you have that loyalty? Did you feel like you would do that?
No, I don't think I think that's why I was struck then because I was like, give your very lives. And I was like, whoa, wait, my life is on the line or could be. And I have to give it to the church. Like, I think in a moment I would have been like, yeah, I'll give my life to like Jesus or whatever. But like to the organization, that's what really threw me off is that it was to the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. Anyways, so yeah, I would have scored high, except I really started to question when I even went through in 2012 that I don't know if I like that is what I was feeling. But yeah.
So Julia, what would you say are your values now? If you were just going to give us a short list of these are the things that I value that moves me forward in my world.
I really like that top one that they gave is like when I focus around where he says the care and harm, they said it's about kindness, gentleness, attachment, and then disliking harming towards others. And so that helps me take a stance on what's happening in Palestine. That helps me like with women or people of color. If I don't want people to be treated this way, I want to show care and kindness to everyone, especially like in my small sphere where it's like my partner or my children or my child or like my animals, like to just show that. And if it doesn't do that, then that's against my values. If it hurts people, it's against my values. If to some degree, because like you have to have boundaries, you have to have healthy boundaries, and that might hurt somebody that because it's an unhealthy relationship. And that's not what I mean. I just mean I don't know how to explain that without going super deep. But yeah, just making sure that I'm healthy, other people are healthy, and care and kindness. I don't know. Would you say What would you say yours are now?
That's really my only value. I remember as I was deconstructing everything and then leaving Christianity too, I had a follower who was a Wiccan and she reached out. She was like, usually the Wiccan motto is just do no harm to all be true or to yourself be true or something. I don't even remember anymore, but just first do no harm type of thing. And it's like that, it just encompasses everything. And it does, of course, this is the age old question that Socrates was philosophizing about thousands of years ago is because we intersect as human beings and sometimes we may have negative impact on others. How do we walk that path of kindness and of not harming others when sometimes we have to make these complex decisions? So that social contract, yes, sometimes somebody may be harmed. Sometimes we may have to sacrifice or give up our autonomy for a moment so that somebody else can have their moment to shine. But minimizing that harm as much as I can. There's a podcast that Condoleezza Rice does with Oprah. I think it's actually one of the Oprah Super Souls. And she talks about aftermath of September 11th when we had to go to war. And she beautifully verbalizes as our Secretary of State at the time, who was making a lot of these, first of all, negotiations and reaching out to other countries and forming the coalition. And I'm not saying that I support or don't support. I don't believe in a war. I'm an anarchist, so I'm not trying to be political here at all. But just as a human making decisions, where she said we knew that there were people in villages that if we struck because this leader was there may be people who were harmed. And then we knew that if we did nothing, that some of our American citizens, so it wasn't a time for inaction. She talks about that balancing act of how do you move forward, not harming anybody, but sometimes we do have to make decisions around that. So it's such a beautiful, nuanced conversation that Condoleezza Rice has about a decision to go to war. Again, a decision that I absolutely do not ever support. I think that we as human beings could live peaceably on this planet without unaliving each other under the military machine. But kindness, I think, encompasses everything. Minimizing our harm and sometimes having the values and standing up and saying, you're harming me. So I'm going to have a boundary and do something that may make you not feel happy for a little bit so that I can minimize the harm for myself. And I think that everything fits inside of that. So then you have things like transparency is a huge thing of mine. I believe in honest discussions and getting to the bottom of things in ways that everybody's informed. When we're being kind and minimizing harm, of course, I'm going to be transparent with my friends and family. Of course, I'm going to be available to people who are dependent on me, my children, my stepchildren, neighbors, family members, sometimes at a sacrifice to myself, because if that's my underlying value to be kind and to minimize harm, that just, to me, that has been my guiding star now for years, and it has never failed. And sometimes in the face of that, I can't be loyal over here. Yeah, okay, so you're my mom, you wrote me a letter and told me you're drop dead. So loyalty's out the window, buddy. To minimize harm to myself and my children and to be kind to myself and my little family, sometimes loyalty is gone. And sometimes the leaders, whether that's of our PTO that we had to vote out or the leader of a country or whoever, sometimes we have to not have that trust and authority because you can't have the kindness and the minimizing of harm with loyalty. I just think that trumps everything. That's the thing. As an ex-Mormon, I believe that the kindness and minimizing harm trumps everything. That is my only value.
And I was going to say, when you talked about your mom, I remember in the episode, so we're talking about for those of you who are joining or don't remember. So we're talking about the episode done by Word Radio about changing ethics or the ethical moral values of ex-Mormon. And they mentioned several times how horrible ex-Mormons were for like cutting off relationships with their parents or not letting their children see their parents, like cutting off relationships with grandparents and things like that. And, like they just said it very harshly, kind of crass about it. Like to me, I was like, they're not giving any. This is
like so Darvo. It was so Darvo.
yeah,
Wag the dog. Yeah.
like people need to cut relationships if they're not healthy. Me as a queer woman, I barely talk to my parents because all I was feeling from them was like shame or judgment, or they would tell me these things like because I'm with a woman or was with a woman. Like I don't want to be around that. That's not healthy for me. That's not healthy for my kids. And or I don't know, like different things like that, or how we're living our lives differently. That just it's not healthy to have that. And there's a lot of people I think that feel that same way, where they have to like have healthy boundaries with their parents. And I just didn't like how they were portraying that like such a negative thing. Like you're automatically a horrible person if you have to cut off your relationship with your parent.
Well, they were using that to just illustrate how mean and angry and bitter ex-Mormons are. Like, oh, they're so nasty. They're such bad people. They're cutting off their family members and they're causing all this conflict.
Like any good therapist would say, to my view, they would say, this is healthy for you to not have this relationship anymore. Distance yourself from toxic relationships. And I think that sometimes members of the church can fall into that where because of the judginess, because of their high morals as far as these 6 categories of loyalty, things like that, like you said, if they put loyalty higher, if they put authority higher, if they put those other things higher, that drops the care, number one. If how do I say that? If they're more
The hierarchy of the values.
if they're like more faithful in church, they're more faithful to the commandment, then they have like loved their children less, or like they have push their beliefs more on their children to try to make themselves feel better. I don't know. I just feel like it's a sticky situation, and I feel like they weren't even giving that a commentary. I'm like, why is this happening? Like, is this actually bad for people to distance themselves from their parents?
I love everything you just said. Oh my gosh. Yeah, because I don't think that these things all go together. I don't think that the care and then for the loyalty and the authority, I don't think that those things go together because I left my children for years with babysitters so that I could be loyal to the church by being a temple worker. Every Friday night, my day night with I mean, no wonder our marriage like disintegrated. Even if he hadn't been mentally ill, even if he hadn't had his stuff, I don't know how we could have had a good marriage when like the only time that we ever spent together in a week was serving in the temple together, where we were in separate areas. Like we got to the temple together. That was our date night. And we never saw each other. It was so ridiculous. But like if I loved my children, I might have had a movie night with them on Fridays. I might have spent time with them instead of just sitting next to them in church on Sunday. I might have done something where I was actually connecting with them and showing them more of the world than just the inside of a Mormon church building. But that authority and the loyalty and all of those other values directly took me away from situations where I was able to care for others. My grandparents were missing from my life from the time I was like a 20-year-old girl because they were on constant missions and then they served in the temple. My grandma was the head matron in the temple for years and years. And like, I didn't have grandparents. And I'm sure that they would say that we loved our grandchildren, but they weren't acting out love. They weren't there for my family for most of my life. They were always serving in church. That loyalty and that authority came first. And I don't think that these values go together. I think that we should throw them all away and that word radio, thinking that this survey says anything about ex-Mormons being less full of values, having lower morals is absolutely ridiculous. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
I would like to throw away half of these values.
As we're speaking, like some of these values are conflicting because, like, you can't. If you have these, you naturally have to lower the rest of them in order to have number one, the care, be the higher one. Because you couldn't love your children or your spouse fully because you were giving too much to the church or you're giving too much to the temple nights or whatever, or you have to judge your kids a certain way instead of loving them fully or helping them. I think there's somewhat conflicting, or they could be to some degree.
So I think that's where we as ex-Mormons, like on the charts, we may look like we don't have morals because those little bars for loyalty and authority and stuff are lower, but we're full-time focused on love. And then Chicken Cardon Blue says that we're full of it. Like we're not really focused on loving. The stats show that they're not. I don't think that you can measure how kind and compassionate somebody is because those things that make me kind and compassionate, they're no longer happening out there in the public. I'm not all over my social media showing myself doing the things, and I'm not standing up in testimony and talking about it. And certainly nobody's asking me for a survey to fill out about the things that I'm doing. And no, I don't donate to charity organizations because I feel like there are enough people that donate to charity organizations. I have a small budget every single month that I always help a single mom. It must be a single mom. That's it. It can be a homeless single mom. It can be just somebody that I know, a niece, my own daughter who's raising my grandbaby. I have a single mom currently living upstairs from me. That I try to do little things for her whenever I can. She has 2 adorable little children under the age of 4. I Nobody knows about it. There's no charity that I'm writing a check because I feel like those institutions, in many ways, are pilfering some of the money. It's very difficult to find charity organizations that are truly transparent, that are using 100% of the money. And if I just walk upstairs and take a bag of groceries to the single mom and her little kids, or buy them some real toys, it's going directly to them. So I certainly don't think that anybody can measure the kindness, compassion, the care that ex Mormons have, but I see it every single day. And I know that you do too.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. There's no way they could them saying they're full of crap because they don't actually value care and the harm of others. That's not actually one of their values. Like, how can they measure that? There's no way that they can actually accurately measure that. And I was just thinking about how I try to help my family as best I can, and a lot of them are single mothers. They just more getting out of divorces and things. And this reminded me of I hope it's okay. I think it's okay if I tell the story, but my sister, shortly after leaving the church, her and her husband were struggling financially, and they got on ex-Mormon Reddit, and she was just made a comment, really joking. She was like, "Hey, does anyone want sides and tokens because we're low on funds?" And it just as a joke, but somebody reached out and they're like, "I know you were joking, but do you need money?" And we sent her a couple $100, and she was so shocked because she was like, "These ex-Mormons are total strangers are helping us." And I just don't, I think you're right. I think there's no way to do a study like that. Oh, just if you don't donate to charity, that means you don't care at all. You don't help people at all. And I think that's false. I think you can donate to charity, or you can do other things like you've just done, like with your upstairs neighbor or these other women like that are single mothers. There's a bunch of different ways that they can't measure that. And I think him and just blanket statements saying that that ex-words are full of crap because they somehow don't care is false. And that's silly.
I also don't want to discourage anyone from donating to charities. I just think that I have personally hit my quota as a Mormon after 44 years and donating between $200,000 and $300,000 to tithes and offerings as an adult. That's a lot of money. And then I left my marriage with zero. I was sleeping in my car. I have no retirement. I'm almost 51 years old. I have reached my quota of giving an organization money. And there's something about that to me that's just so detached. Like, yeah, every month we write out like $2,000 worth of a tithing check and hand it to the bishop. But I wasn't actually using that money and then seeing the person who was helped by it, it was the Mormon church buying up land in Florida is what it was. So for me, it's really important for me to both personally help people up close, know that my money is going just to that. Since I don't have a lot of money that I'm donating, I can barely pay my bills every month. So my budget every month is $40. That's my charitable contribution. And then sometimes I'll fundraise for people. So if I have a neighbor upstairs, if anybody wants to help me buy my single mom neighbor a Christmas tree because she doesn't have one, sometimes I'll fundraise for things. But I don't want to be detached anymore. So I try to do things where I'm connecting with other humans through any of the acts of charity that I do. But I don't want to discourage anyone. So I'm donating to charities. There are some amazing charities out there. Uh, this is just an ex-Mormon trauma thing. So I just wanted to clarify that just a little bit.
I know it's okay if I talk about this too, because learning about the church and how they handle tithing, as a member of the church, when I donated tithing every month regularly, faithfully, that was as a commandment I never struggled with. It was shocking to me or really hard for me when I realized that money was actually not going to people to take care of them.
I thought it was going to widows, people in wheelchairs, people with leprosy in third world countries. I thought that we were vaccinating everybody in the African continent. I When I was a member of the church until 6 years ago, Julia, I had no idea that my tithing money wasn't just helping the needy. I knew that we had to keep the buildings maintained and we're building temples and the church colleges and things like that. But again, that's like helping people. I had zero idea. It wasn't until the SEC thing. It was when I watched 60 Minutes. What was that, 2.5 years ago with the whistleblower? That 60 Minutes watching that was the first time, and I was 48 years old, that I had any idea that the Mormon church was taking my tithing that meant sometimes that my kids did without, tithing when I had my ovarian tumor and we were tithing while we were in medical bankruptcy, losing everything, and I was done. But I thought somewhere there's a widow in like Vietnam who needs this money more than me. I had zero idea that the Mormon church was using that as an investment fund to buy our property in Queen Creek so it could build for profit housing. Zero idea. I was bloody and still mad. I haven't gotten over it.
I don't mean to make this like a weird thing. Let me just say it and then I can correct myself. In this, what Cardinals is throwing out and like people not donating, ex-Mormons not donating to charity, but Mormons doing it. What members of the church, I don't know of any, as a member, as an active member of the church, did not know of any member of the church that was donating to any other charity except the Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so they think it's going to charity, but it's really not. It's going to their Ensign Peak or the SEC or whatever. They're filing this stuff away. So they think that they're doing good. And I think that's good. I think that donating to help tell people is great. That I just learned that the church was not actually using that money to help people in need. So to compare that, to compare that is so like ex-Mormons who don't donate to charity, but are still helping people. Cause I think there's no way to say that. But also Mormons donating to this organization that makes billions of dollars and does very little good. It's just that it's can't compare the two. But also, like, I've seen people in the comments, and I've seen so many stories of this on Mormon Stories and elsewhere, where people who have donated their whole lives, they've served faithfully, they've served missions, they got married in the temple, they do their calling every week, they ask the bishop for help, and he turns them down. And I know you've experienced that as well, where it's,
They didn't help me at all. I've had so many people who are like, didn't the church like help you pay your rent? How did you become homeless? Nope. Because I left the Mormon church and I had just stopped going for a couple of weeks. I hadn't even resigned yet or anything. Like I went inactive is what happened. I went inactive when I was going to a Christian church in Gilbert down the street. I was getting divorced and I reached out to my bishop. I have an eviction notice. I'm about to be evicted. I can't buy groceries. I have nothing. I was like totally zero money, 4 kids dependent on me. I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars of tithing. I've been an active believing Mormon for 44 years of my life. I went into my bishop. Can you help me pay my rent? Can you help me? I was denied a bishop food house order. He wouldn't even let me go down to the food house. He said, no. He said, go ask your other church, ask your family, find another way. We're not helping with any of this. And I received one $1,000 check towards my rent 1 month, the month that I survived unaliving, which is why I'm called Right Take Two. Shouldn't even be here. And then after that, it was just absolutely nothing. I still have the texts on my phone because then when I was evicted, I had to move out of my home. And I'm a single mom, had major health problems, no money, no nothing, no means of taking care. I had nothing. I had zero money. If I wanted to put gas in my car, I have this little GoFund and I'd send it to my friends on Facebook and like text, please, I need gas. I need to buy socks for running, whatever. Can you please help me? That is the only way that I've survived. With 10 months, I had zero money. And then after that, I had almost zero money. But I did get a little bit of child support for a little bit after that 10 months. And the church did not help me at all. So I still have the text from reaching out to my bishop and saying, I'm being evicted. I have to be out of my home. Can I have the elders quorum come help me move all my stuff? I was becoming homeless. I was living in my car for the next 3 months. I just need everything moved into a storage unit. I don't have a house. My children will be homeless. This is Bishop Schnepp. He'll can the elders perform helping? And he said no. And he had the Release Society president send me this little text and he said, we can't always help everybody. We don't have the resources and we are not helping you. So about a year ago, I sent her a little text with the scripture from the Bible on this is pure religion to help like the widows and the needy and whatever. And I got to know if you remember me, but here's 200 articles about what happened in my life during that time and podcasts, or some podcast documentaries. And here's a movie being written of my life and part of my book on what happened during that time that the Mormon church told me that they would not help me. So I received, they wouldn't even send to, like, can you just ask if anyone in the elders quorum can come help me? And they said no.
that is so hard and horrible. And that makes me think, not to compare your stories, but just to add to it. Recently in Mormon Stories, there was a man named Jared Johnson who had served as a bishop, and he was helping. Yeah, he was helping this woman pay her rent, and they were helping, and then he was told to stop. He said he could only do it. Had received training that they could only help these people for 90 days. So once that expired, he was supposed to stop, and so he did. And one of the leading causes among these women, or I guess that's what he was saying, was that one of the highest causes of people unaliving themselves is when they have no house, when they have no home. And so this woman, because this church had stopped helping her, she took her own life. And that really affected this bishop because he felt directly like he could have stopped it and that it was his fault. That was so hard. Even bishops who want to help, they are told training wise that they are to stop after 90. So like the church, even when they do give, it's on a timeline. It's on their time, not yours. I just really struggle with the church's inability to help when they can, because the church has so much money, so many resources. Like, that's just so hard, especially when bishops are put in that situation, or the relief study or whoever that you had messaged. Like, hey, do you realize that I was homeless or that I was struggling when you guys could have helped me? Like, I would feel
My mom had just gone through a divorce. I had just recently, within weeks, survived unaliving. My life was horrible. And the Mormon church was like, yeah, no. And I think the hard thing for me is they put me in that position. I was obeying the church doctrine by getting married young and having all these babies and being a stay-at-home mom and not working and not having my own savings or my own anything. I followed the program that they gave me. I was obedient to them, and there was no safety net for me. There was absolutely no safety net to help take care of me. And not only that, but if I have that 10% tithing, we paid faithfully. We never missed tithing ever. And we were fairly wealthy for a majority of our marriage. If I had that 10% that I had invested in tithing, then we've always paid like $250 a month in fast offerings. I sent 2 missionaries that weren't my missionaries, just like friends and missionaries out, $10,000 for one, $12,000 together. We always donated to Friends of Scouting. We would donate to the Professional Education Fund when that was going on, humanitarian, if there was ever an earthquake, natural disaster, if something needed to be like a temple being built, we donated so much money. If I had that $200,000 or $300,000 that I gave to the church, then I wouldn't have had to have asked my bishop to help me move. I would have had one.
And here you are doing all these things, and the church cannot show up for you in your time of need. And I think that's just so hard. And I hear stories like that all the time. And so
It's always like that all the time too. I thought that I was just, there was something wrong with my bishop, or maybe I'm just, I don't know, maybe there's something about me that people want to say no to me, or they didn't understand what I was going through. But having been on social media for the past 4 years and hearing the quantity of stories that I've heard, there's stuff that just makes my skin crawl. And it always makes me so sad to hear people, just like you say, our bishop helped us with food for a couple of months. I had a woman who was diabetic, and she had like 3 young children, and her husband left her, and she couldn't afford medication. She couldn't afford anything. And we're about to become homeless, and she was actively being Mormon. I saw one of your videos about this, and yep, that's happening to me. My bishop's not helping with anything. They are a $200 billion organization that we know of. I can't even imagine. I know I heard a number one time, not recently on how much tithing the average ward takes in every single month. And as a member, I thought that money was being distributed to people who needed it. I didn't know that they were buying Tesla stock. I didn't know that they were buying Florida.
yeah. And then I think here soon, within the next few years, they can be $1 trillion organization. Because once you hit a certain amount, it just keeps growing. I don't know when that would.
Over 2028. So I read that too. I think that was in the Business Insider article after the SEC stuff came out. They were estimating. So I think it was like 2028, 2029, when it's estimated to be $1 trillion church.
Oh my gosh.
That's so much money.
And that's not very long. That's like pretty soon.
Yeah. That's a lot of money. So yeah, as a Mormon, I felt like I was donating a lot, but I don't think that those values of charity are really deeply instilled in you when you're just writing out that check and putting it in the tithing envelope the way that they are when you're actually helping other people.
And I remember having this thought, like I would pass people who were struggling with homelessness, and I would think, oh, I don't have to help them because I've already donated tithing. Whereas now I just pull out just a little bit of cash and hand it to them to try to help, even if and some part of my head goes through and was like, oh, maybe they're not really struggling, but it doesn't really matter because if they are, I want to help them. And so I like that. It just was a separation from that connection, that human connection where, oh, I gave this money to my bishop or to the church. I don't need to help these people.
You're so tapped out too. I'm already giving everything to the Mormon church. Yeah. I don't have another $5 bill to give to a homeless guy outside of the baseball game when I just wrote out a $600 tithing check. And also I felt the Lord knows how to take care of that. I don't know. There was so much to that. Yeah, you're totally tapped out. As a member of the Mormon church, you give so much that it really keeps you from giving in your communities. And isn't it ironic too how it keeps that all inside the church? Like you donate, but then the Mormon church hold on to that with this iron death grip. I felt this the most when I was living in like this fancy country club neighborhood in Mesa, Arizona called Los Andes. We were living in $1 million homes and had the Mercedes and BMW and all this stuff. And all of our money was just staying in that rich, privileged little bubble. None of my money was going to people 3 neighborhoods over, like the single moms and the families that were struggling. My money was just staying in that bubble of love and privilege.
Yeah.
And it wasn't making out. Now the missionaries are starving. We should do like a whole entire live one day on the Mormon mission because I know that you served a mission. When my son went out on his mission, he was always hungry. Like they hardly give them any budget. The members are supposed to pay, like the members are supposed to provide their meals. They only get a little teeny money. I was always trying to sneak him money and stuff, but he was always hungry. He talks about how much he struggled on his mission. His mission was the worst 2 years of my life as a mom.
That's one of the biggest criticisms I have of the church right now, actually, is how little they seem to care for their missionary. Like I know this isn't the focus of the slide, but my cousin and I serve the same mission. We serve in the Salt Lake City East mission. And
Oh, that's where you serve? No
yeah,
way.
it was in the South mission and then it changed to the East mission. So I was up in like Park City and Green River, Wyoming. And then it was right there in the valley, like Holiday, Utah and stuff. But my cousin was telling I always lived with members, like we just lived in their basement. Like, I was constantly around them. It was fine. I was never in an informant. But he was telling me how he was always an informant. And one of the times there was black mold all over their house. And it was so bad for them. Like they were really struggling and he tried to clear it out. And I was like, and then the lack of food. We at the time in 2012 to 2014, we were only given a budget of $140 a month. And that was like all the food that you had, your shampoo, conditioner, your toilet paper, everything that you had that you needed to live other than your rent, you had to use on that $140. So it's really not very much money, especially now. Like I don't know if the money's gone up a little bit. I hope it has. Well, I just the church, sorry, I have a cough drop in my mouth. The church just does not focus on their missionary efforts. Like it doesn't focus on caring for them. And they're paying so much. These families are giving hundreds of dollars. Like you said, you helped 2 other missionaries, like $10,000, $12,000 for the whole mission. Like that. Anyway, that's one of the biggest criticisms I have of the church is that they don't like these are the main people bringing members in, or one of the main people, one of the main areas, and they're not taking care of them. And these are teenagers. These are 20-year-olds. Like they're young. They're young.
Kids, they're right out of high school now. My son graduated, and 2 weeks later, like he was just like towards the end of his senior year, he's I think I'm going to turn my mission papers in, and we didn't even think he was going to go on a mission. And so he said, I think I'm going to turn my mission papers in. He got his call back really quickly, and he left 2 weeks after graduation. So he went from living at home as a little high school kid to being in Houston, Texas. And Mace got to Texas just a couple months before Hurricane Harvey hit Houston. And it was the most terrifying thing. And I want to pull all of those emails from his mission president and read them on my YouTube because I wasn't allowed to call my son at all. I couldn't have any phone contact with him. He was on a mission. We're watching this stuff on the news and houses are being washed away. And we get an email, your son is in like a 3rd-story apartment and it's flooded in the bottom story. And he doesn't have power and they don't have anything, but they do have water and they do have food and they're going to be okay. I need to talk to him. We're going to send you a daily email, right? Julia was not ever allowed to have contact with my son in the middle of a hurricane. I almost drove to Texas and just brought him home. But the problem is he was so brainwashed that he felt like, Mom, if you call me, I'm not going to pick up the phone because I'm going to be obedient with exactness to my mission president. So he was so brainwashed that he would have never defied at all any of that. So never during that hurricane was I ever allowed to have contact with my son. Then once the water recedes and they're able to pound his apartment, they have them going out and doing cleanup. So they're like tearing apart. They have the little helping hands t-shirts on. They're going out and tearing stuff up. And do you guys have all of the waiter boots and like the heavy duty masks and stuff? Do you have proper protection? Every picture I saw was just them like bare hands with some little Dollar Tree gardening gloves, like pulling out debris and piling it up and stuff. And he was endangered again and again. I was constantly sending emails to his mission president saying, we just got an email from Mason this week that says that he is playing basketball with these 2 dueling gangs, that there was a shooting which unalived somebody last week at this park in downtown Houston. And it's his area. And they're now down there in their suits and ties playing basketball with these guys. I don't want my son in that area. And the mission president would send me back and say, the Lord is protecting the mission, Sister Green. Of this, I have full testimony. The Lord will protect those missionaries. And your son is now sharing the spirit of the gospel. And that's how we end gang warfare, by sharing the gospel. My son's mission, coincidentally, I left the church 2 months after my son came home. My son's mission, I could not believe the lack of concern that this organization has for my son.
Well, like, is he still, can I ask if he's still in the church?
Yeah, because he served that mission. And his wife is also a return missionary. And so, what's the stats on that? If you have double return missionaries that get married in the temple, they have a less than 3% chance of living in the church. I think that's what the data is, where the general membership has a much higher chance of leaving the church. But two return missionaries getting married, and he does have a lot of conflict with doctrines and stuff. But my oldest son is still active. I called him this morning to ask him for their new address so I can send their Christmas presents. And I could hear the organ music. And like, yeah, we're just walking into church, so I'll call you after. And I said, you're serving the Mormon thing Monday. Buddy.
Yeah, I think you're right though, because if the church can get you married in the temple, serving a mission, then you're statistically more likely to stay in the church. I think that is correct. I don't, although I have seen a pattern of people who are going on Mormon stories that they have served missions and they have gone through the temple and they are leaving. But I think you're right on that it's higher. But of course, because I served a mission and I still left and things like that. But
Yeah, interesting.
and
Well,
like, like I had an uncle that served his mission in Taiwan, and he died on his mission, and that affected my family forever. Like he got hit by a bus. Like he and his companion were in a car, and the bus hit them, and they died on the scene. And no, the God's not always going to protect these people. They're just, I don't know, like that. I don't know, that rhetoric just doesn't really work. Like protect these people, protect these missionaries. Don't send them down to these gang fights or whatever where there's been shootings. Like anyway, that's a whole different thing. But I do feel very strongly about the church, not their lack of taking care of missionaries.
yeah, we need to have a whole dialogue around that because you've served a mission. I've had a lot of mission president friends and a lot of nieces and nephews, and a lot of my son's friends and my son's serving a mission. And I feel like I've seen behind the curtain of the Mormon mission. And I belonged to this whole missionary mamas group and stuff where we would dialogue about things all the time. And it is absolutely horrifying. I think that the Mormon missions are one of the most inhumane, cruel, unbelievable things. My nephew who wanted to leave a mission that I helped him here a couple of years ago, because Francie and Jenny was ex-Mormon, so he reached out to me. He was literally hiding in his closet in his mission, having a mental meltdown. He was 19 years old. He's a grown adult. The Mormon church wouldn't give him his passport. His mission president wouldn't let him call home. The mission president called home and told my brother-in-law and sister-in-law that he wants to come home from his mission, but we're going to keep him here. We won't let him get on that airplane. He is a grown adult who was unable, had no money, didn't have his passport. I helped him be able to have the conversation and tell him he's going to go home or he's going to call the authorities. And so he came home. He came home and then he told his parents, screw you. I don't believe in the church. I'm not going on the mission. And it was absolutely horrifying to see the loss of personal rights. These are all adults. You're adult. And the Mormon church controls and endangers them in unbelievable ways. The Mormon mission to me is the most shocking thing the Mormon church does.
Well, and then first of all, I can't think of any organization where they have someone they essentially hire somebody. What?
Yeah.
No, they might.
It's trafficking. It's specifically trafficking. It's labor trafficking. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's the definition of them.
Yeah, I can think of organizations. Jeffrey Epstein started one. He had an island. I can think of lots of organizations
Like,
that
where
do
do
this.
they pay? Like normally the companies pay for you to do the sales because that's your job. And especially as a missionary, you're doing it 24/7. Like you have, and even your day off, which is preparation day, isn't a day off. You're spending it getting laundry done. You're spending it getting groceries done. You're spending it like taking care of the rest of your life. And then you have to start again at 6 p.m. where you have to continue doing your job. There's no breaks. You have to pay in order to do the work for the church. Anyway, it's just really backwards if you look at it in that way. Like I have a lot of thoughts about that.
Yeah, I'm going to be on a Hulu special that we're filming in February where we're going to talk about the Mormon missionaries.
Wow.
I'll send you the details on this. It's a famous author, and the Warner Brothers reached out to me, and we're going to be dialoguing about that's one of my big things that I'm going to be focusing on is the Mormon missions. It is, it's trafficking. It's late, it's forced labor trafficking. It's absolutely insane. And we lack values. The ex-Mormons are the bad guys. I just don't see it that way, Julia. I don't know.
I agree. Wait, was there anything else about the episode? There were several things that they talked about that I did not like. I don't know. I just have a really hard time with word radio. But was there anything specifically that you want to talk about with the episode?
There's so much more, but I have to be somewhere in 15 minutes. So we're going to have to pick out another time and finish this. I would say that just there were so many things that bothered me about how they were pulling the statistics and using them just to criminalize and dehumanize ex-Mormons. Give me one more thing and then I'm going to have to wrap up. Tell me something else about me. The whole thing just made my brain explode. And if you guys haven't watched this, I will put the link in my link tree on my TikTok after we wrap and post this video to my YouTube. I will put the link to the Word Radio episode in the description.
I don't know if this is even that important, but one thing that really did bother me, and maybe it's just because we don't talk about that kind of stuff on Mormon stories. Like we try to keep it very, like everyone can consume this information, but they talked about, they were giving hypothetical situations and then maybe just,
Melissa Grenfeld swinging.
no, the other thing.
Cool.
So I think maybe it was
The
for the
chicken?
study, the chicken. Oh my gosh. They asked the question, is this morally right? If a man has, I don't know how to say this. If a man assaults a chicken and then kills and eats,
They can go on a date.
and then they're like, is this morally
Chicken's
bad?
not alive. It's if the
They're like,
cost
no,
of witnessing.
but no one knows about it. No one's harmed. But I was like, the chicken, it was literally harmed, and then you killed it and ate it. So yeah, it's bad. And then they asked the question like, if if two siblings are consenting adults and they're in college and they have relations with each other and there's no chance of STIs or no chances of pregnancy, is it bad? My first thought was yes, because that's incest and you're not supposed to do that. That's not okay. Like, anyway, they were asking these questions. I don't know if it was part of the study or if they were just asking them. Do you remember?
And study. Yep. That was how they gleaned the information from the study. So those were part of the questions. But then again, what they're insinuating, although I don't think they directly said it, was, yeah, well, the ex-Mormons, obviously, they answered these questions, yes, because look how low they score. From some of the questions from the study,
Bothered me.
the ex-Mormons,
But
like, yeah,
also, another
ex-Mormons
interesting
were
thing.
taking home CrossFit rotisserie chickens.
Right. Anyway, I did not like that. I didn't like, because they didn't, that's what they were implying. They're like, oh, because the ex-Mormons would vote this way. But another thing that I thought was interesting is that Cardinellis specifically was criticizing the study pretty much the whole time. He was like, oh, I didn't like how they asked these questions, or I didn't like this thing. And he was just like openly talking about how much he didn't like it. And as he was saying that, I was like, this is really interesting that they're basing their whole conclusion on this study. And yet he's also criticizing the study.
I know.
I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting.
So it shows a little bit of cognitive dissonance, maybe is what you're getting at, that they didn't really enjoy the study or believe there was completely bulletproof. And yet the study does show, according to that little graph, that ex-Mormons don't have morals. So we like the conclusion of the study. We don't necessarily like the methodology. We don't necessarily embrace the study, but we like this conclusion. And that's overall, Julia, what I felt like I got out of the whole entire episode. That whole segment was just how, look, somebody says that ex-Mormons have no values, which is the thumbnail, which is the title, and all of the audio clips leading into it was how ex-Mormons don't have morals.
Yeah.
And they made a whole entire segment out of it, about including a single ex-Mormon. By the way, my assistant has reached out to them, I think maybe 6 different times now, telling them that I would love to come on World Radio and speak directly with Kwaku, who I call the second hottest man in the Mormon church, lucky blue Smith being number 1. But so far, no response. No, I haven't.
You actually heard of Word Radio? Because I only see him on a few times. He wasn't on that.
I don't know these things now, but he was on the Polygamy one. I'll send it to your way too. And yeah, he's still on there, but
On Word Radio. I can try, but it's really hard to watch them. But anyway, it was, interesting that they were criticizing it and then yet running with the results that they liked.
I think that's the thing. They were running with the results that they liked. Exactly put. And the result is ex-Mormons have no morals. I guess maybe we should thank them for pointing out to us that we lack morals and values.
Which we know is not true. No, not true.
Anyway, we will be linking the show in the description on YouTube, and I'll put it up in my link tree on TikTok. And Julia, I don't know what you'll do with it for your people. I'll send you a copy of this live. And I am going to go hit our Tucson Street Fair with my partner, Kevin, because we buy all of our midwinter gifts locally. We're going to head down that way and see if we can find some cool things for the kiddos.
Well, thanks for everybody for joining us. This was a really fun conversation. And I disagree with the characterization of ex-Mormons from Word Radio. I think that's very It was very unfair of them. And I don't know. I just did not like her.
Thank you for saying so. And thank you for doing a live with me. I just feel so honored. I love your thoughts on everything. I could listen to your thoughts on any given topic any day of the week.
I hardly ever do live, so I really like when people invite me. So that's fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. Okay, guys, we'll post this a couple different places later. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to hop off. Julia, have an amazing afternoon. And everyone, please go follow Julia. She's the best. Okay, bye, guys.